Yo, what's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be doing my Week 9 recap and lineup review. Going to go over the Week 9 slate, recap it, talk about my DraftKings lineups, and some of the lineups that I played on Yahoo. Just played DK and Yahoo this week, no FanDuel. We'll talk about the plays that I was on, that I was heavy on, the guys that did well for me, maybe the guys that disappointed for me. Talk about mostly my 20 max lineups, but I will go over some of my 150 max lineups as well. Did play a lot of lineups this week, so not going to be able to cover all of them, but I'll be sure to talk about the players I had the most exposure to. And then we'll go through the 10 lineups that I play on Yahoo every week. For those of you that do want to get on Yahoo, I do recommend it. It's a very good site for those of you that want to avoid the big 150 max tournaments. On Yahoo, they do only have 10 max, so whether you're playing against, I know some of the pros play there, like Papa Gates plays on Yahoo, but there's only 10 entries per tournament, so it's pretty easy to max enter a lot of the tournaments. Like their big tournament, it's like $100K with $10, so 10 times 10, $100. You can max enter that tournament. That's what I do every week. Yahoo's definitely a good site for those of you that play low stakes but still want to play multiple lineups, even though you can't play like 150 or 20. Having 10 entry limit on every contest is really nice, so I recommend you guys get over there. My referral is down in the description for those of you that want to join. My referral for all my DFS or all the DFS sites I play on is down in the description below. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started looking at these DraftKings lineups. So all these lineups you see with 3 entries, these were my 20 max lineups, and then this lineup I believe I had in 150 max as well. It was just kind of a duplicate. But my 20 max lineups, I stuck to a really tight core this week. Didn't go so well. NFL really hasn't gone well since the beginning of the year. Started off the year really good. I think I won like 4 straight weeks, or I went 3-1. And so far these last 4 weeks, I believe I've only profited like one of these last 4 weeks. It's been a rough going. This week at least, I missed on a lot of the receivers. I went expensive at running back in a ton of my lineups, or at least I had a lot of exposure to the expensive running backs, and that did work out well. Had a ton of Kamara, a ton of Gurley, a ton of McCaffrey. I had some Hunt, had some James Conner. Really, the only 2 cheap running backs I had exposure to were Nick Chubb and Peyton Barber. I had in a few lineups. So the only reason I was able to get those guys in so many lineups was because I went cheap at receiver. As you can see in some of these lineups, had some Marvin Jones. He was one of my highest exposed receivers. Once we got the Golden Tate news that he was going to be traded, felt like that was going to open up a lot of targets for Marvin Jones. Kind of the same with Kenny Galladay. I did have exposure to Galladay as well, but I definitely had more exposure to Jones than Galladay. I mentioned Djax in my video on Tuesday. I really like this spot for Djax with Fitzpatrick at quarterback. Thought he was going to have sort of a breakout game. That did not go well. DJ Moore, I played in some lineups. Marvin Jones again. Did have some Aldrick Robinson. Not a ton, but 3,200 I believe was his price. I definitely wanted a little bit of Robinson with just what it allowed me to do at my other positions. Kind of the same with Treadwell. I think I had like 15% Robinson, 20% Treadwell. I didn't go too crazy on them, but I did want some exposure just with how cheap they are. I thought both of them were going to see at least probably 5 to 6 targets. And if they got 12, 13 DraftKings points, that's not going to win you a tournament, but if you get 12, 13 from one of your cheap guys, and then that allows you to pay up for Gurley or Kamara, who goes for 30, 40, you could win a tournament with Laquan Treadwell getting you 12 or 13. So I did have some Treadwell. Had a lot of Traquan Smith. Had a lot of Cortland Sutton. Cortland Sutton was definitely another receiver I had a ton of exposure to. Just felt like he was too cheap with DT out of Denver. We were going to see Sutton get a lot of targets. I'm not even sure how many targets he got. Let's pull up the game log real quick. He only finished with 8.7 DK points. I know at the beginning of the game, I think he dropped a long touchdown, or because there was people tweeting about it on Twitter. He did get 5 targets against Houston, 3 catches, 87 yards. Not a great game from Sutton, but 3,900 just with what it allowed you to do. I really liked him at receiver just for value. That was kind of the cheap receivers I was on. Any expensive receivers I had exposure to was mainly Julio and Michael Thomas. I barely had any AB, barely had any Hopkins. If I was able to fit in an expensive receiver, it was mostly either Michael Thomas or Julio, but I think I only had them in like 10%. It was really all the expensive running backs for me. Had Gurley like 60%, had Kamara, I think 55, had McCaffrey 50, had Hunt in 30%, I believe, and had James Conner in like 10%. And I think I had Chubb as a value running back at like 20% exposure. So running back, I kind of hit on the right running backs, just missed on a lot of the receivers. My 20 max lineups didn't do that great. I think I cashed like 5 out of 20. At quarterback, I was able to hit on some of the decent quarterback plays, I guess. I mean, I had a ton of Cam Newton. I pretty much had to put a cap on him because when I ran my initial build, it was giving me like 70% Cam Newton. I knew I didn't want that much of him. I wanted some exposure to other quarterbacks, so I capped Newton at 40%. That allowed me to get, I think, like 20-something%. Patrick Mahomes, had a little bit of Goff, had a little bit of Cousins, a little bit of Drew Brees. I stuck to a pretty tight quarterback. I think I only played like 6 quarterbacks mostly this week. Even in my 150, I think I only had exposure to like 6 or 7 quarterbacks. Fitzpatrick was one that I did have some exposure to, but it was mostly Cam Newton, Patrick Mahomes that I ran with at quarterback. Talked about the running backs that I played, talked about mostly the receivers I played. Adam Thielen, that's one I forgot to mention. I did have a ton of Adam Thielen. He was the expensive receiver I pretty much had the most exposure to. I did have Julio and Michael Thomas in some lineups, but I believe I wound up with like 45 or 50% Adam Thielen. Just felt like this was going to be such a good spot for him. No Steph Diggs. Adam Thielen was just going to get so much volume. Really didn't turn out that well. Adam Thielen had his worst game of the year with Steph Diggs out, which really doesn't make a ton of sense, but it is what it is. 12.7 DK points, pretty bad performance from Adam Thielen. That one really hurt pretty badly. But tight end, pretty much was Kyle Rudolph, I believe. I think I had to cap Kyle Rudolph as well. He was projected so high for so cheap that it wound up giving me like 70% Kyle Rudolph. I know I didn't want that much. Capped him, I believe, at 40% as well. So I had 40% Rudolph, ton of him, had some Kelsey, and I think I had Kelsey like 25-30%. And then it was just like a sprinkle of Greg Olsen, a sprinkle of Njoku, a sprinkle of O.J. Howard. Those were really the only tight ends I played. Had McDonald in a few percentage of lineups, but mostly Rudolph and Travis Kelsey. I went with the tight end. And then defense, I think I stuck to like the Broncos, the Dolphins, and the Chargers, I believe, were some of the defenses I had the most exposure to. I really didn't have any Bears D. I don't think I played the Bears D in any lineups just because 4,100 for a defense just seems like too hefty of a price tag to pay. I knew I didn't want to pay that much for a defense. I wanted the expensive running backs and some of the expensive receivers, so tried to go cheap at defense, pretty much try to do that every week. That's kind of what landed me on the Broncos, Chargers, Dolphins, the defenses I had the most exposure to. But yeah, those were my 20 max lineups. I just scrolled through them. For those of you that do want to see them, if you want to pause the video and look at some of them, you can. But let's go ahead and move over to Yahoo and look at the 10 lineups that I played over there. Pretty much stuck to the tight core on Yahoo as well. Pretty much got crushed on here as well too. I think I only cashed like 1 out of 10 lineups. Was just a rough week. Had so much Todd Gurley. I did have a ton of McCaffrey. I think I'm going to play McCaffrey in almost every lineup on Yahoo because he was just way underpriced. I think it was $27 over there, which is just really cheap of a price tag. But you can see kind of the same receivers I played on DK, I played on Yahoo. Courtland Sutton, Deshaun Jackson, did have a little Devontae Parker. I think this was the only lineup I played Devontae Parker. Once we got the news that Steele was going to be active, I definitely lowered my exposure to Parker. Didn't want as much as I had. But D-Jack, Sutton, Rudolph I played a lot. Kamara, Gurley, McCaffrey, Fitzpatrick, Chargers D. Chargers D was min priced on Yahoo. Played them in a ton of lineups. But this lineup had Newton and McCaffrey with D-Jacks on the other side. Then I had Sanders and Sutton in this lineup. Njoku, Gurley, Chargers D. I did play LaShawn McCoy in a few lineups on Yahoo because he was insanely cheap. He was like $13, $14, which is close to the minimum price for a running back. I think the minimum for running backs is $10. So like McCoy just allowed me so much. I felt like he could at least get probably 10, 15 fantasy points, could at least get the volume, but really didn't happen. 10 carries, 10 yards, 4 targets, 4 catches, 19 yards. That was pretty fish play in my part, even though Shady McCoy was cheap. Definitely should not have played him. Moving on to the next lineup. This lineup I had Mahomes with McCaffrey, Gurley, Galladay, Treadwell, Julio Jones, Courtland Sutton, and Chargers D. Even though I only cashed like 1 out of 10, I know a lot of these lineups like just fell short of the cash line. I think the cash line was like 135 or 136. So a lot of these lineups just came short. This lineup was my best one, I'm pretty sure. Drew Brees to Michael Thomas. This was the only lineup where I played Brees or Thomas. Had McCoy, McCaffrey, Marvin Jones, Sutton, Jordan Reed, Todd Gurley, Chargers D. This one played Deshaun Watson. I did have him in about 3 Yahoo lineups because he was really, really cheap. He was $24, I believe. Yeah, $24, and the minimum price for a quarterback is $20. So Deshaun Watson, I didn't like this matchup, but he was just way too cheap. He was 28% owned on Yahoo. Just too cheap of a price tag for a quarterback that has to do as much as he does. So I played Watson in this lineup with Sutton on the other side of that game. Then had McCoy again, McCaffrey, Thielen, Treadwell, Kelsey, Gurley, and then Buffalo D. This lineup, Newton to McCaffrey with Gurley, Treadwell, Mike Evans, Juju Smith-Schuster was sort of low-owned flyer in this lineup. He was like $22 or $23, really cheap. Definitely didn't love this matchup for Juju, but with his price tag, felt like he did have a little bit of upside. Knew he was going to be low-owned. Then the rest of this lineup, Jordan Reed, Sutton, Chargers D. Played Sutton in almost every lineup, along with McCaffrey. He was another guy I had a ton of exposure to. He was close to minimum price. But Fitzpatrick, Peterson, McCaffrey, Galladay, Thielen, Evans, Reed, Sutton, Chargers D in this lineup. Then my last 3, another lineup with Watson, Sutton, Peterson, McCaffrey, Jones, Keenan Allen, Rudolph, Gurley, Dolphins D. Kirk Cousins in this lineup with Thielen, Rudolph. Sort of went with the Vikings onslaught kind of. Cousins, Thielen, Rudolph. Then ran it back with Marvin Jones. Then had McCaffrey, Gurley, Aldrick Robinson as well on the Vikings side. Had 4 Vikings in this lineup. Probably a little bit too much. But then flex was Sutton again and Chargers D. And then my last Yahoo lineup was Deshaun Watson, McCaffrey, Gurley, Jones, Thielen, Djax, Reed, Sutton, and Chargers D. Really like this lineup. I'm surprised this lineup did so poorly. I thought a lot of the guys in this lineup were really good plays. But those were my Yahoo lineups. Like I mentioned, if you want to sign up for Yahoo, if you want to join, my referral link down in the description, would appreciate it if you would join through my link. Helps both of us out. But yeah, let's go ahead and look at the Showdown slate. I didn't mention that at the beginning, but we are going to take a look at the Showdown slate for Monday Night Football. Game between the Titans and the Cowboys. Quickly go over the player pool for this game, the guys we want to target, and then we'll talk about roster construction as well, how we want to build a lineup. So clearly the top option, Ezekiel Elliott, I feel like you kind of just have to have on the Showdown slate. There's just no other studs really to choose from. The Cowboys, really their stud is Ezekiel Elliott. The Titans really don't have like that number 1 receiver, number 1 running back that you just have to have in fantasy. Ezekiel Elliott's that one guy I feel like we just have to have. He's $13K. If you play him in captain, I believe he's $19,500. It's going to be hard to play Zeke in captain, but when we get to lineup construction, we'll see what ways we can build a lineup with Zeke. But for like cash games or just overall exposure to Zeke, you should have him in a ton of lineups. The dude just gets a ton of carries. They're involving him in the pass game a lot more this year. He's getting 5, 6 targets, 7 targets week 5 against Houston. So love this spot for Zeke. I think he's just really hard to avoid. If you don't play Zeke, you're probably just going to be leaving a ton of salary on the table. Or you're just going to be playing guys you don't feel very comfortable with. So I like Zeke at $13K. We're definitely going to need some value though. So Marcus Mariota at $9,800. I feel like it still has some upside, even though Mariota has not been good this year. I think we can play Mariota here. Single game showdown slate. We don't have a ton of options to choose from. If you want to play one of the quarterbacks, you're either playing Prescott or Mariota. Mariota's the guy I think I want to go to here. He still has some upside, even though he hasn't shown it. We know Mariota has potential to throw for 300 yards, multiple touchdowns, could also run in a touchdown as well. Even though he hasn't been rushing as much this year, he still has the ability to scramble, to move. So I like Mariota here. I think we get a decent game out of him, at least a better game than Prescott, to where he's a better play over Prescott. So I like going with Zeke and then running it back with Mariota. Then we definitely want to get either a pass catcher, I feel like, preferably the pass catcher we go with for our quarterback. So trying to find someone we can pair with Mariota. Corey Davis, I feel like, is probably the guy at $7,600. He's just the guy that gets the most consistent amount of targets. Last 4 weeks, 15, 6, 4, and 7 targets, 34, 8, 3, and 4 DraftKings points. He's not the most exciting play, especially when you look at the game log the last 3 weeks, just 8, 3, and 4 DK points. But if Mariota's going to be throwing to somebody, it's probably going to be Corey Davis or Dion Lewis. Those are probably the most reliable options that Mariota can throw to. So I like going with Corey Davis, pairing him with Mariota. Obviously, Zeke I love. Some of the other guys we can talk about. So these three guys right here are probably going to be the guys I have the most exposure to in this showdown slate. But we'll talk about ways we can construct a lineup. So if we want to play Zeke at captain at 19.5, that leaves us 6,100 remaining per player. So we are definitely going to have to go pretty much straight down and try and find some value. You do have the kickers who you could play. I think kickers are for sure in play in this game. I expect this game to be relatively low scoring. You just have two offenses that aren't very good. The Cowboys have a solid D, and with how bad the Cowboys' offense is, I could see going to Tennessee's D as well. But the kickers, I feel like, are probably going to put up double-digit points, both of them possibly. So if you wanted to play both kickers, 42 and 3,400, that really allow you to get up to some of the studs at the top, or quote-unquote studs. But if we went with Mariota, or if you want to go Prescott, either way, but we went Mariota, paired him with Corey Davis, that leaves us 5,500. So then you could go to Tajay Sharp if you feel like he gets any targets. Last 4 weeks, he's gotten 3, 4, 2, and 9 targets. He's going to be on the field along with Corey Davis, so he could be the guy you look to. If you went with Tajay Sharp, I don't think you could get up to Amari Cooper. We wouldn't have enough for Amari Cooper, which kind of sucks. I feel like playing two receivers from the Titans might be a little thin or might be a little bit too much. But let's see if we went up to Cooper, took out Davis, put in Cooper, and then if we wanted to replace one of the kickers, took out that kicker, that'd leave us 2,800. You could play Allen Hurns, but I feel like Allen Hurns is probably going to take a little bit of a hit when it comes to targets, now that Amari Cooper is there. Amari Cooper I definitely like here. I didn't talk about him, but with the Cowboys using a first pick on Cooper, they are definitely going to want, or they're definitely very high on him. As you can see here, we're not going to ease him in. They're going to let Cooper go out there and play. Now, how efficient the Cowboys' offense will be and if they're able to move the ball down the field, I guess that's just something we'll have to wait and see. But for now, I plan on having a lot of exposure to Cooper as well. I played some primetime lineups, some two-game slate lineups on Yahoo, and I did have a lot of Cooper. So hopefully he can have a big performance. I will have plenty of exposure to him in this showdown slate. Definitely could roll with Cooper there. That'll leave you enough for Allen Hurns. So if you wanted to play Allen Hurns, you could do that. I think you can leave salary on the table in this game just because there's not really a ton of strong plays. I don't really feel like I have to use this salary. If I wanted to, I guess I'd upgrade from Ryan Suckup to the Cowboys kicker. You could do that, but really not necessary. So this could be a lineup you use if you were to play Zeke at captain. If you were to go to a cheaper captain, so if you want to play maybe Cooper at captain, if you want to play like Dion Lewis, Beasley, you could go to at captain. Let's just see or if we put Cooper in captain, what that allows us to do. Could probably play Zeke. Going Cooper and Zeke, might want to get some exposure on the other side. So if we went with Mariota, paired him with one of the receivers, probably Corey Davis again, that leaves us 3,500. Then you could go maybe to Rico Gathers, to Allen Hurns. Rico Gathers could be sort of like your GPP low-owned flyer since Geoff Swaim is doubtful for this game. There's probably a good chance that Gathers is going to be the starting tight end, and he's going to be on the field a little bit. So if you want to play him at 1,400, that would leave you 5,600. You could go to Tajay Sharp then. If you were to plug in Allen Hurns, that would leave you 4,200, so then you could put in the kicker. So that could be sort of a lineup you do if you were to play Cooper in your captain. Kind of allows you to fit in more of the top guys if you do that. And if you just like straight up punt captain and play like a maybe a Tajay Sharp or Tywan Taylor, if you went with Sharp, that really just, you could play anybody you wanted almost. Could play Zeke, could play Prescott, could probably play Mariota as well. Maybe try and find one value play, maybe Hurns. Maybe take a flyer on Rico Gathers. If you did that, leave you 7K. Then you could play Cole Beasley at 6,800. So that could for sure be a way you construct a lineup in tournaments. You got exposure to both quarterbacks who obviously have 25, 30 point upside. Even though they haven't shown it this year, quarterbacks are probably the most likely to go for 25, 30 points, either them or Zeke. But you have all three of those in your lineup. Then you've got Rico Gathers, who could catch a touchdown here. Not sure he's going to be on the field a ton, but with Swaim doubtful, there's a chance Gathers starts at tight end and at least is on the field enough to where he could maybe luck into a touchdown. You got Beasley, who's probably still going to see some targets, even though Amari Cooper is there. Beasley's probably going to get at least 5-6 targets. And then Tajay Sharp at your captain. Feels a little thin, but if Sharp gets maybe 50 yards or 4 catches, 50 yards and a touchdown, he gets 16 points. That really could be enough. That could be all you need in your captain spot. So going with a guy like Tajay Sharp, I think makes sense, a captain, with what it allows you to do in your flex spots. But yeah, I think that's it for the shut-on slate, guys. Some quick analysis of the shut-on slate. Quick sort of thoughts on roster construction as well. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this little video with the shut-on slate. Hopefully you enjoyed the recap as well. I do really appreciate you guys watching the video. If you enjoyed, just make sure you click that like button before you get out of here. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. And if you do have any questions, feel free to hit me up on Twitter at the DFS_GOAT. Or you can leave a comment down below, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. But yeah, guys, good luck tonight on the Showdown slate, and we will see you back again on Tuesday with another NBA video. Peace.